right, so welcome. This is Matt Orozco from Macabre Daily, and I'm joined by Kelly Kate and James Watts of Death Trip. Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you as well.
Hello. Nice to just meet you now.
Yes, we're not longtime friends. We are just meeting for the first time. So I will say, want to kick things off with a couple of questions, but also a bit of a preface in that I recently had watched Death Trip and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I see, there's a lot of entertainment to ingest, either, by choice or but why we're asked to watch. And I actually find, that the work that's happening in the independent horror world right now is pretty amazing. In fact, I'd put it up to most of the stuff that's coming out of the major kind of distributions. So when I saw Death Trip, there's a couple things I'll speak to specifically that I really enjoyed, but I just wanted to start this off by saying I thought it was a great, great film, and it kept me guessing the entire time. And I even induced a small panic attack during the party scene. Not like a full blown, but like I was just like, my heart was palpitating. I was like, I feel like I've been at this party before at this exact moment where everything goes wrong. So kudos for capturing that so well.
Thank you.
It makes us so happy to hear that.
Yeah, really.
We're very nervous that people would misconstrue that as like our version of a good time. Like when he was beatboxing during the guitar, all that kind of moment, we were like, people are gonna watch this and think it's like a cool thing that they're doing, but it's supposed to just be
a nightmare. Yeah.
A piling up of uncomfortable events. Sorry.
No. In fact, actually, no, because I'm back. I'll take this. I have a few questions, but I'll like hop around a little bit because I'm a little over the place myself. But on that note, so I thought it was really interesting how we didn't grow up together. I'm meeting you both for the first time, but I feel like we've been at the same party before. And seeing the same people, the guy breaking the bottles and everyone cheering for absolutely no reason, like the creepiness of some people's, ways of conversating and trying to meet other people, the just so much of it was captured so extremely well. So I was wondering, was that intentional to try and capture horror of the recklessness of youth, or was that just a happy byproduct of just the way the script and the film all came together?
We actually had a second party scene that was maybe not worse, but like the flip side, I would say, of that like party nightmare. That's just a fun fact, I guess.
The city equivalent.
The city party, and it's in our extended deleted scenes sequence. I'm getting away from the question, but
yes,
I'd say it was intentional. Yeah. We wanted to make a really just like unsettling party vibe, which was really fun. We shot it all in a night, which is crazy. Take it away.
No. It was supposed to be so scary. I mean, one of the biggest messages for both of us, well, there's like three kind of big ones, but one of them is the thing of when you're young, or just in general, if you're a huge horror fan or something and you've never been out of the city, and you go to the country and there's like an old guy next to you and you're like, oh my God, I've seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Nothing good's happening in that house. But then like four dudes show up and they're just like, we're going to go to a party. You want to come? And you're like, oh, hell yeah, this seems like a good adventure. And it's like the priorities of what you're scared by are really askew and also just influenced by the wrong things. So the idea that like the party to us is like the scariest decision anyone can make. But also that party we wanted it to feel like, because in our reality of the movie, that party is like a huge impetus that causes one character to shift, I guess, in the next morning. I don't know why I'm trying to really dance around the spoilers.
Spoiling or not.
So to us, it's really like nightmarish. It's like, oh, this is where, and also when Tatiana starts kind of becoming more of a character for the first time, and then she obviously picks up. Anyways, really rambling, really trying to avoid plot spoilers. But the answer is yes. I'm so glad you felt that way. The party to us is supposed to be so nerve-wracking and feel like cluttered.
Well, I think you nailed it right when you said, like, at the time, you don't realize how terrifying that situation really is. Because in hindsight, I mean, I'm 35, and like, if four people were to come up to me in a restaurant and invite me to a party out of nowhere, my immediate reaction would not be, oh, absolutely. Like it would, there's no consideration process that it goes through. It's just right to, that's not a good idea. I don't know you. Like, please move away, versus your 20s, you're almost like, you're looking for the fix of life somehow. And that random opportunity to party with people you don't know just scratches a really weird itch you don't have any other time in your life, perhaps.
Yeah, you think about all the stupid things that you've done in your 20s. Like, I feel like at least on one occasion with you, I've like walked into a stranger's apartment. We're like, shit, they're partying, let's go. Like, really dumb. Sorry, can I swear?
You can say whatever you want.
Listen,
Okay,
it's
great.
off the record because we're fucking gonna get raw.
No.
So,
But,
No, please feel free with the
like,
the expletives.
I don't know.
Right.
We like just things of being in the city and walking home and like somebody pulling up and be like, hey, you want to ride? And we're like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And like, why do you do these things? But yeah, and then in retrospect, you're like, oof, that could have gone really, really poorly, or inviting strange people to your house. And then now I'm just talking about an experience I had of like going to a bar with a bunch of friends and then inviting a stranger back to the house. And it was like nighttime, and then kind of daylight started breaking, and we looked, and the guy were like, oh my God, you're like 50, dude. Like, I don't know why I bring that up, but it's just like weird things like that, where you're just doing stupid things. And I don't even know where I'm going with this. I just really, that's
the more the message of the movie.
That is.
But it's living in the moment, and I think it's the horrors of living in the moment that we don't realize are really scary until we look at them kind of at a different perspective or a third person.
Mm-hmm.
We're like conditioned to look for like film horror tropes in the real world, which is the dumbest advice you could ever have. Like, if I'm lost maybe in the middle of like the country and I'm younger and I've never been there before, and I'm like about to, like, I haven't had water or food and I can't find anything, and I see like one dilapidated house, I'm like maybe not going to go in because I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre so much.
Yeah.
Which is like, that person will help you probably more than like inviting someone from a bar to your house in the middle of that person's probably going to hurt you way more than the house.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you trust this familiarity you have with people for no real reason. And oftentimes, like we've talked about this a bit, like sometimes it's just purely aesthetic of like, oh, this person kind of dresses like me, or like looks like they could belong in my circle. Like, yeah, they're probably trustworthy, especially running in more kind of like fringe, like alt scenes. You're like, yeah, this guy has a leather jacket and some pins. I'm sure he's fine.
Yeah.
Like that. Why would you trust
growing up in the punk scene? You know that firsthand.
Exactly.
Like, oh, you put Elmer's glue in your hair? Like, which kind? You know, and like instead of like, oh, that's weird. Like, oh, which kind are you using? Because the school stuff's no good. So on that note, you know, did you both come from like a rural kind of town, like where the film is set in, or do you come from more of a city background?
Well, your connection, James is the one with the connection to the actual location where we shot the film. We're both from Ottawa, Ontario, which is Canada's capital.
Capital Canada, don't forget.
Not super metropolitan, but definitely not like a country vibe. But yeah, if you want to talk about the cottage.
No, I would spend my summers there for forever. It's like my great grandparents' cottage, and it was sold right after we finished the movie. So it exists, and then it was torn down. So no one will ever be able to shoot in that cottage again.
Yeah.
But we, no, I spent a lot of time there, and I think there's two huge, I guess like, well, I don't say sparks, but whatever, ideas for this movie. And one was when Kelly went up to the cottage with me for the first time, and there was like a do not enter sign or something, just like on private property. And she was like, oh my God, this is a sign. We got to get the hell out of here. No, it just,
I think it said like, do not enter, turn around now.
Yeah, something like that.
And
enter your own risk.
Yeah, we did shoot a scene with that sign, and we ended up cutting it. But it's, again, me being like a silly, like, city woman being like, oh God, that's a bad sign. Like, we got to get out of here now. Whereas, you know, this stranger with a sign on their private property, is the likelihood that they'll come out and like attack me or kill me are way slimmer than, again, James like turning on me and strangling me for no reason. You know?
Yeah, much more likely.
That's kind of like what we kind of get into in the movie, as I'm sure you saw, and I'm sure you kind of know what I'm talking about.
I did, and if it's helpful to talk about spoilers, we're happy to. You know, I think it can open up a lot of more questions. But I was going to ask you about, you know, I mean, on that kind of on that similar vein, if we will, I noticed there's quite a few red herrings along the way that kind of, and one of them is a supernatural angle that, you know, I kind of noticed, and so I was wondering, the ending that you all landed on, was that the one you intended, or did you have a few different ways you wanted this to go, and ultimately this is where it settled?
We started with the ending.
Oh,
so
okay.
We knew that that's what we were doing. I basically had the idea. I mean, yeah, if we're gonna get into spoilers,
yeah, we must just do it. Spoiler alert.
It's out.
Pause. Go check out Death Trip. Go to deathtripmovie.com. And if you hate it, even better, you come back and we'll explain. Maybe you'll hate it less or more. Who knows? But spoiler We're in the spoiler zone. I don't know why.
Spoiler zone's wide open. Get your trench coats and your tarps. It's spoiler zone.
It's gonna get messy. Yeah, so basically I had the idea of, I mean, we've both been aspiring filmmakers, I guess, for a long time, and like very into horror movies specifically, thrillers, all that kind of thing, genre movies. And one day, I don't even know what we're talking about, but I was like, oh, wouldn't it be funny or like perfect if, you know, 4 people go to a cottage, 3 girls, 1 guy, and like it's a bunch of horror stuff. And of course, like the guy friend ends up being the killer because like obviously. And then from there, like, yeah, that would be pretty great. And then we kind of talked about it more and developed it from there as a starting point. So then it was a matter of like establishing Garrett, who's the male friend, as like your kind of typical like nice guy, soft guy. Like, why would this guy be involved with these girls? Like, how does this all make sense? Because in our lives, we're like, okay, if like I keep bringing up you as an example, James is not going to kill me. Well,
no, I'm not.
No, he's a very nice guy. But you know, like,
at least not on this camera, I think is probably the best case.
There you go. Yeah, great promo for the movie. But you know, it's like in our group of friends, we're like, oh, if like you were to go to a cottage with me and 2 female friends, like that wouldn't be weird. But in some circles, it may seem a bit odd. So we had to like figure that all out and set it up and really work on the character dynamics and relationships and stuff like that. So we do spend a lot of time on that. And then in terms of red herrings, I mean, we just love them as a.
Well, yeah, it's like the joke of I always love about like the first Scream movie is like at one point you like kind of believe for a moment that maybe Henry Winkler is like killer or something. You're just like why? It's just the way that the amount they go out of the way, and then also the theme of like Kelly, her like worst nightmare is like right in front of her eyes and she can't see it, but she is like internally very scared of everything else that she shouldn't be. So it's like the red herrings for the most part, at least the first 2 days, the first 2 mornings, like the red hair, like it's all kind of from Kelly's perspective. It's like inside her, in our opinion, like inside her fear. And so like there's 2 sequences in the movie that are dream sequences that we thought were very clear they were dream sequences, but maybe they aren't as much. But they're like supposed to like be the material reenactment of Kelly's like I guess internal her interiority. Yeah, like the second one is like she's terrified that this guy maybe killed his wife, and she like really loves Garrett, but she's like maybe a bit jealous because Garrett's like looking at this, he was like checking out this girl earlier, and she like likes Garrett, and it's just like all those together in our mind would create the dream of like Garrett goes to this house and oh no, he's saving this woman, but like that's weird, but also like this guy's there and like is there a ghost of them? But it's mostly and a lot of it is the red herrings and like the dread that you feel when you're scared of the wrong thing, I guess. Yeah, where you're like, oh god, like I am in like the country night thing where it's like some people find it so peaceful because it is, but some people find it like murderously silent.
Yeah,
but your eyes will play tricks on you in those situations. Like the darkness is like, you know, our brains love it because it's for some reason is like a perfect etch-a-sketch for like all the things we fear the most. And it just kind of puts itself on the dark space we're looking at. But I like that you mentioned the dynamics between the characters, because I thought, you know, I don't want to keep you on too much praise, but like the dynamics between those characters was what felt very genuine. And I was wondering, are you all friends? You know, are you all kind of connected in some way outside of the film? Because there was such a great dynamic, and the example of specifically, you know, 1 guy and 3 girls going to a cabin. It's not really terrifying in the sense of like I'm a well-adapted adult, you know, probably in my, you know, I'd say anytime after maybe 25, you know, that's when we start to really figure. That's at least my opinion. But in the other situations, that's totally reasonable to think that, like, you know, or not reasonable. We don't think it at the time, but it's reasonable to expect that, given what we see in the news, is like people do just go crazy, and they'll flip on something. So I think I even might have got away from my own question, but was there a relationship outside of the film to each other before filming?
Do you want to break down the specifics?
Like, what are the specifics?
Garrett was Kelly's bandmate's fiance at the time.
Yeah, we have like very weird, like we all kind of run in the same circles or like kind of adjacent circles. Garrett, yes, my bandmate Gabby's fiance at the time.
Gash Rat. Check him out.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so we knew him, like we were not super close friends, but we knew he had acting experience and he had kind of the perfect vibe and face for
the Jonah Hill eyes.
Yeah, you keep saying the Jonah Hill stare. So we knew that we wanted him involved, assuming he was like down for it. And then Melina and Tat are both or at the time, we're both kind of participants in the Montreal Anglophone comedy scene. So either doing stand-up or sketch or improv. And we ended up
we didn't know them either.
Yeah, we didn't really know them. Like I'd seen them do stand-up before. Like, oh yeah, cool. Like they seem cool. And we just all kind of met. And
the answer is we weren't before, but we are now.
That's true. Yeah, it's a very good bonding experience to be out.
And the greatest gift of all, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But the way that we did it was we just met the people and we were like, who do we find the most chill, I guess?
Yeah.
And then we kind of all hung out, and then everyone would just rehearse for like 3 months. And then they kind of wrote, with the exception of Kelly and Garrett, whose characters were like on a pretty straight path that we knew. And also Kelly's the writer, so she could do whatever she wants. It's revisions.
Yeah, there you
but
go.
Everyone kind of like made their own character because we knew that they wanted them to have their own names. And so we kind of had a rough script, but we just did improv for like 3 months, wrote everything down, and then kind of picked the best of it. And then when we shot it, we were like, all right, you're doing this, 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 this. And everyone was like locked and ready to go as if they've been hanging out for years.
And like, obviously we had the main beats down and what we needed to hit. And then everyone's relationship to one another within the movie. As you've mentioned before, we originally called them like Ross, Rachel, Phoebe, and Monica in terms of like who knew each other for how long. It's like, I'm Rachel, Garrett's Ross, Melina's Monica, because we all like went to high school together. And then Tatiana is Phoebe because she's like kind of a newer friend. And I don't know. So that's how we kind of had everyone outlined, which is really fun.
And we also thought like, oh my God, wouldn't a sensational episode of Friends be if Ross just started fucking killing everyone?
That's true.
And Phoebe's the one who bested him in the end. It was just like a great thing. It's like everyone loves Phoebe. Everyone hates Ross.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, it's almost like you take some of these premises, you flip them on their head. Like if you've seen Freaky at all, you know, the idea, it's just Freaky Friday, except you Freaky Friday with a serial killer. Like it's genius, you know, but like you take these simple ideas of being able to, you know, take what is pretty much a very pedestrian experience of someone being in the friend zone in perpetuity, and that friend zoning turning into a murderous rampage, described entirely off of the entitlement of being a male and a white male in today's society. I picked up on, I don't know if any of that was intentional around the, you know, use of making this feel really much in this moment, in regards to just the way in which characters handle certain situations. You know, even the fact that, you know, some people are averse to things like drugs and alcohol, like it paints a different picture of the typical, you know, horror character, if you will, as being someone who is not, you know, entirely, not everyone, the final girl has to be virginal. It's like some people are just operating on their own wavelength, and thought y'all did that really, really well.
You're the first, but that we were so upset. We read so many reviews, and maybe like 2 people even mentioned that as a theme. It was, no one had really picked up on it, and we were like, oh, because that was like to us a very exciting part about the movie.
A lot of people are like, why? I don't understand why Garrett does what he does. Like, how is this guy the killer? It makes no sense. We're like, so
have you read?
Like,
do you read the news?
Yeah, exactly. It's just like this guy, he feels entitled to my character's body, time, and mind. And like the second, you know, it's like you're allowed to have a flake, whatever. It's like, it's so frustrating that
he sees her have a meaningless hookup with someone
exactly.
right after he did. He's like, this will not stand.
Yeah, because so I belong to him because we kissed or whatever, you know, and we're friends. So he fills in the blanks in his own mind, and he decides that he's entitled to me. And then I am not part of that conversation because I'm just a lowly woman or whatever. And then he flips and snaps.
And I think that kind of triangle is so common, though, in so many friendly relationships, you know. And I think, you know, we don't have to get too heavy, but you know, it's kind of how it happens, you know. Like that's when rape happens among friends. Like that's how it happens. It's not because someone just decided one day. Like it's this almost this expectation is not met, and because of there's this something in the society, you know, something in the world is telling us, whether it's our parents, you know, what we watch, the entertainment, you know, whatever it is telling us this is yours. And all of a sudden, like it's not, you know. I think it was, you know, I'm not going on a tangent, but I think one thing that you all tapped into that's really effective is this idea that what scares people today is not what scared us before, but really what is happening every day. It's just it could be happening to you, you know. Like if you're in that friend group, you know, imagine what it would be like to be in that friend group. And I think that that's a pretty powerful place to be in. When you were writing this out, did you write this all out so much to a T? I mean, it sounds like there was some improvisation, but when it comes to like the specific ways in which people react to certain things, even the part where Garrett's in the restaurant and he's totally downplaying these other four guys on the basis alone of them being just competition to him. Like, how much of that is scripted out, or how much of that is just you all riffing on the situation?
Well, with that one, it's like, I don't know how well you remember it, but it's like that one is literally just like they go to the restaurant. We show that they are drunk now, and they're like, these guys come and they're charming to the three of the characters, and yeah, just Garrett just like trying to make excuses. And we thought it was funny to have him be like, we're just the cars, we gotta, and then it was a way to have the car be at the restaurant, but also that whole, it's so funny because the party sequence I love so much, but it is the longest excuse for like a setup in any, like, it's just the whole thing exists to make Garrett jealous. So that basically the beat would be like, they talk about the foot, the guys come over, Garrett's not into it, the guys kind of bully Garrett a bit, everyone outvotes him, they get in the truck.
Because like our rehearsals were by and large with like the core cast, so myself, Tatiana, Melina, Garrett. But did we even rehearse with those guys?
Yeah, we did. We were like a minute. For like a minute.
Forever ago. Yeah, but like some certain segments, obviously, we didn't have as much time to like work the way we'd like to work. So a huge credit to like every single performer involved. Just like really turned it out. You know, whether or not we were sure it was going to happen, like it was amazing.
Well, there's like a lot of things that's like funny, like at least to us, like the movie is pretty, like we find it pretty funny. Like, okay, so the one thing I find genuinely scary and not funny is like the whole, like third morning when they find Kelly and they're screaming. Like, to me, that's just like a scary moment. But the rest of it is like the tension is almost like so comically thick the whole movie that we're like, and the fact that, especially the second time watching it, the fact that the idea that Melina and Kelly are like such old friends with Garrett, that like, and Tatiana is such a new enough friend that when Melina's like, Garrett just kissed me, and she's like, he what? Yeah. And her being like, it's fine. We have to save him from the guy next door. She's like, no, what, he kissed you? Where? Like, just having one character who's like far enough away removed from a person to be like, no, this is objectively weird. What are you doing?
Yeah. And there's a lot of ignoring of red flags on the part of Melina and myself regarding Garrett.
It's like he can't be a bad guy. He has like a Yoko Ono t-shirt.
Exactly. That's the moral of the story for us.
But we also ignore so many red flags, like of our friends, right? Like, yeah, I mean, you know, exactly. it's the faults on our friendships are not so much that they're not there. It's just that we're seeing them differently. We're not seeing them as a fault necessarily, as much as something that we can excuse. And, you know, again, I think the horror hit for me, at least on a couple levels. One being the very superficial level of people are dying, and the effects, which are quite good, you know, like are very good at showing you how just terrifying that is. The second, though, and again, the more subterranean and like, you know, darker theme is like, this could happen to anybody, and this happens a lot. I mean, as it not so much to this extent, but this is how this kind of thing happens: is having people like this in situations like this, and then having someone who doesn't know how to act and has been either conditioned some way to think that they're owed something. In the part where he continually goes and tries to make out with every person there, I just thought, like, it's almost comical, but it's happening at such a point where it's like, this is not funny at all. But like, why does he think? What is he doing?
Yeah, exactly.
He's almost like a machine. Like he's a Duracell, you know, like the Energizer Bunny, just like except for kissing, not banging a drum. Now, on the inspirations, what were some things that inspired you all in regards to not just the narrative, but also the visual? Because I did pick up on a couple of things that felt a bit homage to things like The Shining. I love that great kind of drone shot I think you got, which is
very classic.
That was well amazing. Done. Like, you hear how hard that was to get that shot in The Shining, whatever, in the late 80s, early 80s, late 70s?
Late 70s, yeah.
Yeah, and then like they did it like 1,000 times until it was perfectly stable or whatever, and then now it's just a thing of being like, like,
just
nice,
like
got it. So we thought it was a cool, and that was a fun. We liked the thing of like being eaten by the woods. But do you know, like I can say that I looked at my, like about a year ago, I looked at my Letterboxd like year in review, like all the movies I'd watched from that time period, and the two directors I'd watched the most were Robert Altman and Brian De Palma, which is like an accident. But I'm sure there's one sequence in that movie that is, I'm sure, ripped off the Brian De Palma.
What, like the woods thing?
Yeah, where Tat's like walking and then like Garrett walks in the frame. He's like following her.
Yeah.
But like, honestly, yeah, for me at least, I just love, it's the thing that people hate the most about Robert Altman movies, and I think people hate about our movie as well, is I just love when people talk over each other for like so long. I could watch that for hours. And I have maybe it's like an ADD thing, but I just like, you could choose which part of the conversation you want to listen to. If there's like two characters talking, you could just choose one. It's, I don't know, I like it.
Yeah, and again, bringing back this no-go zone into the conversation of like, we watched Baghead really early on when we were kind of developing this. We're like, yeah, that's kind of the vibe.
Again, like, do you guys know what mumblecore is?
Again, the mumblecore being the no-go zone, but it's impossible to, I think, talk about this movie without even mentioning it, because it makes things seem like it made filmmaking seem more accessible. You know, you're like, okay, I could probably do something along these lines ish. You know what I mean?
I also think of grounded characters. I mean, I think I don't love all the mumblecore films out there, but I will say that they do a really good job of capturing particularly teens and young adults angst extremely well. And that's something that Hollywood has traditionally not been very good at, unless it's under the lens of something really traumatic. You know, it's easy to investigate trauma intimately, but we're trying to investigate, you know, people just living their life intimately. It always has to be somewhat kind of extremed, you know, or it has to be somewhat extreme in some regard for us to, I don't know, for it to feel producible. But I think that's what we got from those, is just that sense of reality.
But yeah, that's something I always talk to Kelly about, why I would always love the mumblecore movies, is like, even if they're in on the joke or aware of it, they're like the most accurate, honest, like satirical movies about that age group, or that type of like privileged 20-something who's just like, oh, college. Like the whole drama for that movie is like, the breakup was weird, and I'm still kind of thinking about it. But they're just, because they're very honest, to their benefit or not, they're very like, they're very fun to watch now, because you're like, oh god, it's like miserable. It's, if you like peeling off your own skin or whatever that feeling is,
just cringing. I think they call it cringe now.
the cringe post. But if you like the feeling of when you feel like uncomfortable in your arms when someone's doing like an embarrassing performance or something, that's like my favorite. I was like, I watch movies like that for hours. I love it. So uncomfortable.
No, I love the shocking displays of discomfort. Like it is. I'm also, as an ADHDer myself, I also find chaos to be quite inviting. And for the same reason, I find that, you know, the authenticity of being able to present people as very flawed, but just as human, like makes it easier. You know, it's easier to receive that than is something that you just can't buy, because we are driven entirely by what interests us and what excites us. And like, it's not exciting to look at something that can't be seen as real.
No, and they also are movies like that I find are very, it's like, I remember reading once that, oh my God, Woman Under the Influence, when that movie came out, people were like, oh, they're like cheering for Peter Falk. And then like 10 years later, people were like booing Peter Falk. And then 10 years later, they were cheering for him again. And it was like whatever way the pendulum of whatever, like, I don't know, the way society was feeling about at that moment. And they were like, that movie, it's the La Tigre song, right? Like, misogynist, genius. But it's like, the only reason that it's like a fun debate is because it's so objectively honest and human. So you're like, even if the Cassavetes has the wrong opinion, it's still like the characters are all rounded enough that you could just root for whoever you want. I guess. Makes sense.
Well, you have to have someone to root for. I recently watched a movie. It's a Netflix one that was an original one that has some very irredeemable characters, you know, and I found myself at the end of it feeling, I don't want, and they don't want anything good to happen to any of these people. Like I and ultimately think good things do happen to bad people. So I don't know if it's trying to tell me something that I'm not ready to hear, but ultimately, I wanted to know a little bit more about, you know, your all's, like, are you all horror fans? And if so, what was the first horror movie that really grabbed you, and what has become, you know, really your favorite horror film over time?
I got this.
You got it?
I got this. We just we're talking about this relatively recently. For me, I think the first was Poltergeist, and that was when I was like 8 or 9 or something, like watching it on TV one Halloween with friends and being like, hey, this is long as hell, and be like, this is so scary. Like, it scared the shit out of me. So that was one. And then like maybe The Sixth Sense, even though that's not really a horror movie now, but at the time seeing it when you're 8 or 9, you're like, oh my God. Like, really not being able to sleep. It was really terrifying. So those are two big formative ones. And my cousin once around that age described the plot of the Blair Witch Project to me, and I couldn't sleep. I don't know, like I didn't even see it. I was just like, oh my God, this is terrifying. I keep saying that. Those are 3. And then now, my favorite horror film is Inland Empire, because
does it count as a horror movie?
I say it does. Because it elicits the same like feeling. Like it's the only thing that's really like haunted me, I think, since then, like in a really like lasting way, where I'm shook after. I'm like I can't move. Like I really feel it deeply, and I think about it for a long time afterwards. And I think that's saying something, and that makes it a horror movie.
No, it's good.
I agree.
I think with that movie all the time, there's that scene where she says something while they're in the middle of the take, and she goes, "Oh my god, that sounds like a line from our film," and you're like, "Oh my god, she's become so detached." It's like the scariest feeling ever.
Yeah, it's very like, in some ways, like realistically very scary, like losing your mind moments.
It's like Requiem for a Dream. I mean, it's scary because what you're seeing actually happens. You're just seeing it in a very visually chaotic way. But it kind of describes, I mean, again, I go back to the scene in the party near the end where things are unraveling at a very quick pace. Part of that reaction I had from it has a lot to do with the way in which it was edited, right? There's a lot of moving from that strobe room, which for some reason exists at every weird party that's ever existed. There's always a room that has like a light that doesn't work. Yeah, just put a light there and just like there's like some weird music coming from somewhere. But it's just so disorienting. And then you have obviously the woman just literally peeling her skin off in front of you. So I think that level of normalcy is also very terrifying because it is just, it exists.
The one thing I don't know if it's the scariest part of Blair Witch Project, but when everyone talks about the thing that when I remember that movie, the scary thing is when I think Mike is his name, but when the guy kicks the map in the river, he's like, "I kicked the fucking map in the river," and you're like, "Jesus Christ, why did he do that?" It's the scariest thing of that movie because you're just like, okay, it's like because it's a very human. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't even know I said my favorite horror movie was Scream on a website, but that was because it was like a fun movie to talk about. But
The Shining, you said.
The Shining, I've probably seen The Shining more than anything, but I do think that is, I just find The Shining really funny. Like I could watch that. It's also one of those movies that like if it's on, I'll just be like, "Oh, crazy," and then like I'll just watch the whole Shining. I don't know why, and I like the thing of like, oh, there's no question who the villain is, and it just like he starts off at 11 and then just whatever. But probably honestly like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is also a very funny movie.
Yeah.
That's also, I made a list for something, but it was so detailed because I was just like I couldn't. Everyone's asked, I know answer this question. I feel like I don't know.
Also, gotta never forget that Matthew McConaughey.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3?
I think or the like next class.
No, I think it's the one. It's the when Leatherface has a sister or something, right? There's the one with Renee Zellweger, and it's the cover is amazing. When I was a kid at video stores, because it's like the lipstick is the chainsaw, and you're like, this is not your granddad's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's a new one.
And it was the only time I'd ever seen a new release of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film like displayed on video. Like I was technically old enough when Leatherface was released to like be alive, but like they don't think an infant was allowed around the tapes at that time. But the Next Generation was something that truly unhinged performances from actors that would never act that way ever again. Like you'll never get that performance out of Renee Zellweger, even in Judy. Like she didn't deliver the same level of insanity that is required for the Next Generation.
It's my favorite Matthew McConaughey role, like by far.
You're very attracted to him in that movie. Yeah, I think
he's like super hot in that movie. I don't even remember what he does exactly.
He has like a weird robot leg throughout the whole thing that's like,
I don't know.
He's very sweaty.
It's unhinged. That's definitely.
I watched Boys to the Side like last night, and he is a hunky Manic Pixie Dream Cop man in that movie. Nah. I think he'd like it. Same era.
Just to take it back to the key Matthew McConaughey performance, the one that the Oscars won't give him the credit he deserves for, but the
Killer Joe.
The Killer Joe or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the next generation, because either war is. I mean, hopefully maybe one day I'll get to talk to Matthew McConaughey and ask him about it, and be maybe the first and last person to do so. But
that would be amazing.
Well, I guess my last question for you both is what can we expect from you next? And I will preface this by saying I've seen a lot of really amazing horror coming from Canada. I don't know what's happening over there. The pandemic has just been treating you all extremely well in regards to creativity. But there's been a lot of really great Canadian horror films coming out. So I want to know what's next from you both.
We're working on some stuff. You want to go for it?
You want me to do the dance?
Yeah.
There's 2 movies we really want to make. One, we're gonna wait till we get more money and maybe make another one to see that we are talented enough to do this one justice. But we really want to make like a full-on body horror actor in Toronto crossover Degrassi style horror freak show movie.
Yeah.
And the one we want to make next really badly is like it would be like kind of, do you remember in the party scene with the girl peeling off her skin, that like that feeling of that scene. We really want to make a movie that's just that for like an hour and 20 minutes stretched out.
And incredibly gory and crazy, and
2 women in a cabin, like Persona with kind of Britney Spears vibe, but just fully gory.
I realized
That's our dream.
Today, it's like if this one is like women's relationship to men, the next one will ideally be women's relationship to one another, and then the last one will be women's relationship to herself, and they get progressively more disgusting, which is hilarious.
Yeah, the third one we really want to do the like, obviously like you're in Canada and you love horror movies, like David Cronenberg is like your god, I guess, but I also just like the Possession, that movie where the woman in the subway, what's her name, Janie, that she's so good anyway, but
the actress, forget her name.
Yeah, the freak out she has in the subway, we just like would love. I want to just film like 6 scenes like that. It's like the movie, it just peaks at that moment. You're like, I want more. But yeah, that's it. We really don't even know if we'll be able to make any of these movies. We're just really want to make them.
We're working on it.
Well, I hope you can. I hope you can, because I really, you know, again, I say this with pure kind of, you know, pure from the heart, I guess, is that some of the work I've seen, you know, the folks from Bright Hill Road I spoke to before, and I love their film as well. And they had, you know, we're putting out some great work in Canada. So I think that whatever's happening in Canada, let's make sure you all can do more of it. And you'll certainly have support from us over here, just by, you know, so we'll always look at the content, and certainly would love to carry on another conversation at some point about, you know, great Canadian horror we're missing out on, because I think there is a lot that we probably here in the States aren't aware of. And, you know, there's something important there. So
we would love to. We made a list that we didn't end up even submitting. That was like our favorite Canadian horror movies, and I'm obsessed with Canadian horror movies. I find them really, I don't know. They're my I would love to talk about it. It's the weird. Canada's so weird. And also I do have this fun. It's like this is a very long diatribe, but the thing of like how like France and America argue over who invented film first or whatever. There is like the thing where the same year Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Black Christmas came out. And it's the thing of like, was it Bob Clark in Canada, or was it Tobe Hooper in the States? It's like, we'll never know. But I want to say it's Canada, but I want to give it to also Texas Chainsaw Massacre because I love the movie so much.
Yeah, both good.
Both good.
It can be great for different things. Yeah, I mean, I give Black Christmas full credit for being the first real slasher, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre gave us the first real monster that wasn't a actual monster, like a first human monster in horror, not so much the kind of actual universal monster. So
I think the thing that freaks out everyone when they watch that movie, especially when they're so young, because a lot of people say when they're young and they don't understand human emotion with as much nuance as you obviously would, but like the fact that Leatherface cries at the very beginning, like he's just like really scared, and you're like, oh God, why is he scared? He's a big man. It made no sense.
Fucks with your brain. It's great.
It taps into the thing we like to think about the most, which is our most vulnerable and kind of affected populations. And you know, the fact that someone has like a child like mine but has a murderous capability is like, it's just the number one fear for pretty much every suburban parent in America. It's like a murder. I mean, just something that has no inhibition but also is entirely human in its own right. So
that's another thing we ripped off, is the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because I saw like Toby Hooper remixed it right before he died, and I saw some screening of it, and he turned the chainsaw up at the end like way louder than anything on the mix, and it was just like, Jesus Christ, but so cool. So that we were just like, what can we like have like just ripping through the final scene? And then we're like, oh, we'll just cut everything out and just use the snowmobile sound. That was probably, we ripped that off from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm just now really thinking like, what did we steal from? And I know there's like so many things. Much, but I don't know.
It's only theft when everyone knows where it came from. It's not theft when not theft when no one can make the connections. So I think we
didn't do it just to rip it off. It has a happy coincidence. The snowmobile really exists to be us the funniest thing that could distract Garrett. At a time when he is like seemingly in charge of the situation, and he's like, wait, what? Snowmobile? Crazy. And then just long enough for him to get hit. We found that really funny.